I never imagined that disguising as a janitor would lead to an unexpected love. It was a gray morning, clouds hanging like heavy curtains, and I was out of options. My heart raced. It felt like the ground had split beneath me, and I was free falling into darkness. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. In the echoing silence of the abandoned building, I grasped the handle of my mop, my hands trembling. I wiped my sweaty palms on my uniform. I was a shadow in this place, a ghost among forgotten memories. The pungent scent of mildew clung to the air, mixing with the faint aroma of old paper. Dust particles danced in the sun's meager rays, slipping through cracked windows like whispers of a past life. Behind me, the echo of my footsteps sounded foreign, a stark reminder of the life I had left behind. I was no longer a graduate on the hopeful hunt for a job, I was now just a janitor, shifting through someone else's debris. My family had once believed in my dreams, my mother's warm hugs, my father's proud smile, but all that felt distant now, like shadows of a once bright day. As I pushed the mop along the filthy floor, I caught sight of her Ava. She was huddled at a desk, deeply immersed in her work, completely unaware of me. Her dark curls bounced gently as she typed furiously. She wore headphones, bobbing her head to a rhythm I couldn't hear. Something in my chest tightened. I felt drawn to her, like a moth to a flame. But uncertainty lurked beneath my curiosity. I had become invisible, a mere maintenance worker in a world full of ambitions. A gust of wind rattled the window panes, snatching my moment, and my heart raced with fear. What would she think of me? Would she laugh at my disguise? I hesitated, my breath hitching in my throat. Suddenly, a loud crash interrupted my thoughts. A stack of papers tumbled to the floor. Ava startled, her eyes wide as saucers. I froze. The noise echoed around us like a thunderclap, and for a heartbeat, time stood still. Our gazes locked. Her startled expression morphed into intrigue, but I felt the familiar weight of doubt clouding my hope. The silence thickened, holding us captive. "Are you okay?" she finally asked, her voice gentle yet firm, grounding me from my spiral of anxiety. I was paralyzed, words escaping me. I could feel my cheeks flush, heat radiating through me. She smiled, and in that fleeting second, the world shimmered. But just then, her phone rang, cutting through the moment like a knife. I flinched, letting the mop slip from my fingers. I wanted to scream, to mend the sudden fracture between us. I could still see the glimmer of curiosity in her eyes, yet the call siphoned away the magic we had almost grasped together. As she turned her back to me, I felt a heavy weight settle in my chest. I couldn't shake the sense that this encounter was significant, that it was the turning point I had waited for, or perhaps the beginning of something far more complicated than I ever anticipated. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As I stood there, rooted to the spot, the weight of my own insignificance crashed over me like a wave. The mop slipped from my hand and landed with a soft thud against the floor, a casualty of an unexpected moment. I watched Ava, her voice drifting away on the other end of the phone, as I felt more like a ghost than a person, invisible and fading. With each passing second, I fought the urge to retreat into the labyrinth of this empty building. The overwhelming longing to feel known, to be seen as more than just a faceless worker, clashed fiercely with the fear that my own reality would suffocate any possibility of connection. I could be bold, I reminded myself, but every ounce of that courage evaporated like the dust motes in the sunlight whenever she turned her back to me. As Ava ended her call, she began gathering the papers strewn across her desk with a weary sigh. I lingered in the shadows, contemplating a fleeting escape, when she suddenly looked up, her brow furrowed in thought. "Hey," she said, as if sensing my hesitation, "I could really use an extra pair of hands here." The invitation hung in the air, sweet and hesitant. I swallowed my pride and stepped forward, guided by a glimmer of hope igniting in my chest. I can help," I stammered, the words feeling foreign as they left my lips. "Great. Thanks," she smiled, and that small gesture pushed back the clouds looming in my mind. I stepped closer and began gathering the disheveled papers into neat piles, trying my best to focus on the task rather than the whirlwind of emotions spiraling around us. "Looks like you have a lot on your plate," I said, stealing glances at her as I worked. She had an intensity about her that was captivating, and it drew out my curiosity like a moth to light. "Oh, you have no idea," she chuckled, a light sound that made my heart skip. "I'm trying to finish this project for my new job. The deadline is crushing, but it's what I've always wanted." Her eyes sparkled with a fierce passion, and in that moment, I couldn't help but feel a pang of envy. Here was someone chasing after her dreams while I was buried in remnants of mine. "What's the project about?" I found myself asking, eager to learn more. "It's a non-profit initiative aimed at supporting underprivileged youth through education," she replied eagerly, her enthusiasm contagious. It dawned on me that I hadn't been the only one trapped behind faceless roles. She too had struggles hidden beneath her bright smile. "That sounds amazing," I said, my voice earnest. "I've always admired people who want to make a difference." Her gaze sharpened, as if noticing a depth in my words. "And what about you? What do you do, besides mop?" she asked, a teasing edge to her tone that warmed the moment that my heart sank, but I forced a smile. "I, help clean up someone else's mess," I replied, knowing full well how hollow it sounded. "But I'm just trying to find my footing, you know. It's been a rough patch." Her expression softened. "We all go through rough patches," she said, her voice becoming more earnest. "Sometimes, what feels like a setback can be a setup for something greater." There was wisdom in her words, something that resonated within me. As we continued to work together, I found the conversation flowed with ease, punctuated by laughter that started to fill the empty spaces in my heart. Maybe this brief connection was something I could cling to, momentary reprieve from my own worries, but just as the weight in my chest began to lift, a loud rattle echoed through the hollow halls. The sound shattered the tranquility we had built, pulling both of us from our moment. Suddenly, the door swung open, and a figure loomed in the doorway, an unwelcome reminder of my disguise. "Hey! You're not supposed to be in here," the voice called out, and I felt my stomach drop. The tension escalated. They weren't just disrupting the moment, it felt like they were pulling the very floor from beneath me. I looked at Ava, her eyes mirroring the same confusion and fear, and in that instant, I knew I had to choose, retreat back into the shadows or step forward and face whatever consequence awaited. That I took a breath, my heart thunderous, the walls closing in around me. Would this be the end of something that suddenly felt so promising, or a chance to finally be seen for who I was destined to become? As the figure stepped further into the room, the harsh fluorescent light illuminated the familiar contours of Jim, the building's maintenance supervisor. A look of confusion crossed his face, morphing quickly into displeasure. "What are you two doing?" he barked, crossing his arms over his chest like a barrier. The air grew thick with unspoken judgments, and I could feel Ava's uncertainty radiating off her. "Just finishing up here," I replied, my voice barely escaping my throat. I attempted to maintain my composure, but the unease bubbled beneath the surface. Ava stood beside me, her earlier spark dampening as she clenched her jaw. "Finishing up? I thought I told you no one was allowed in this part of the building after hours," Jim retorted, looking pointedly at me. I braced myself, ready for a reprimand that felt like yet another weight added to the stack crushing my spirit. "That I just thought I could help Ava with her project, since she needed it," I began, willing the truth to spill out, to somehow make this right. Ava looked at me, her own determination flickering like a candle caught in the draft of Jim's disapproval. "I did need help, Jim. And I don't think that's against any rule," she said, her voice stronger than I had anticipated. She straightened up, defiance knitting her brows together. Jim stared at her, bewildered. Fine, just keep it down, alright? He didn't wait for a response before he turned on his heel and stormed back out of the room, leaving an oppressive silence in his wake. For a moment, I wasn't sure whether to feel relief or fear, as if the two emotions were braiding together in the air between us. Ava let out a shaky breath, breaking the stillness. Well, that was intense, she said, a tentative smile creeping onto her lips. The remnants of tension in my chest began to ease as I returned her smile, the sound of laughter echoing faintly in the back of my mind after such an unsettling interruption. That I owe you one for that, I admitted, genuinely grateful, as her bravery breathed life into the moment. Only if we can continue working together on this project, she proposed, an eager spark in her eyes. Just like that, a thread of connection re-established itself between us. I could really use the extra perspective. Absolutely, I'm all in, I replied, buoyed by her enthusiasm. My willingness to put myself out there was sharpening, but along with it came a question that gnawed at the edges of my mind. What if this connection, fragile and beautiful as it was simply a temporary escape from my tumultuous reality? As we resumed organizing the papers, I caught her side-eyeing me, a hint of curiosity glimmering in her expression. So, she ventured, her tone light yet probing. What are you really hoping to find in this rough patch you mentioned? The question hung tantalizingly in the air, and the way she leaned into it made my heart clench. I had countless answers swirling beneath my skin, ready to explode. Could I admit I was searching not just for purpose, but for someone who could see the real me, behind the facade I had created? I want to find out who I am beneath all of this, I finally managed, gesturing vaguely to the mop still lying forgotten on the ground. It feels like I've been lost for so long, just blending in and disappearing. Ava nodded, her expression shifting to one of deep understanding. I think a lot of us feel that way sometimes, she said gently. But it sounds like you're already on that journey. Look at you, willing to step out and help me, even when it scared you. Her acknowledgement struck a chord, sparking something like hope within me. In this moment, under the soft glint of dimming lights, I was reminded that sometimes simply being there for someone else could ignite a path toward self-discovery. As the hours slipped by in a rhythm of papers and conversation, the heaviness in my heart began to lift, mold into something softer. But a sense of unease still clawed at gnawing feeling that my real life was lurking just outside that door, waiting for me to address it fully. We were deep in discussion when my phone buzzed insistently in my pocket, an uninvited reminder of the reality I wanted to escape. I fished for it and saw the name flashing on the screen, Laramie, estranged sister. Her name wrapped around my heart like barbed wire, pulling memories of a fractured family and unresolved emotions into the present. Everything okay? Ava asked, her voice pulling me back to the room. Yeah, just my sister, I said, trying to sound casually dismissive, but my hands trembled with uncertainty. What about her? Ava inquired, her eyes shining with genuine curiosity. I hesitated, my heart racing. How could I explain everything that lay beneath? This call could change everything, either pulling me back to confront the past or leading me down an even darker path. I think I ought to answer this, I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and the bitter taste of fate. I stood, the weight of uncertainty pressing down as I walked toward the door, half turned to Ava, whose gaze held a mix of concern and curiosity. Will you be here? I asked, needing that reassurance like a lifeline. Of course, she replied, with a warmth that made my heart ache. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out into the dimly lit hallway, my heart pounding in my chest. I was about to confront a ghost from my past, and in doing so, I was afraid I might unravel everything I had just begun to build. The cold fluorescent lights hummed above me as I stepped into the corridor, each footfall echoing against the stark walls. My phone buzzed again in my grasp, the screen lighting up Laura's name like a beacon from a forgotten time. It always stirred turbulent emotions within me: anger, guilt, regret, a haunting symphony of memories I wasn't ready to confront. With a single tap, I answered, my heartbeat thrumming in my ears. Laura? Hey, her voice cracked slightly, and it sent an unexpected wave of nostalgia crashing over me. It had been years since I had last heard that tone, vulnerable yet resilient, full of unsaid apologies and far too many unresolved questions. "What do you want?" I forced the words out, fueled by a blend of apprehension and necessity. "Can we talk?" "There's something I need to discuss," she replied, urgency creeping into her tone like a storm on the horizon. "Can't it wait?" I pressed, my mind racing back to the last time we spoke, an argument that left our relationship battered, like a ship wrecked against sharp rocks. No, it can't. Her voice softened, and for a brief moment, I felt my defenses slipping as if she were reaching out through the void that separated us. "I need to explain." "Please, it's important." That I took a breath, drawing in the stale air of the hallway, the familiar scent of cleaning supplies heavy around me. "Fine," I finally conceded, resigned to the emotional mire this would dredge up yet again. "Where?" "The parking lot." "I'm outside." "Fine," I repeated, grounding myself with the word. I ended the call, staring at the screen flashing with her name, conflicted over the young woman who had once been my confidant. This meeting could peel away years of silence or thrust us deeper into an abyss we were both trying to escape. As I approached the exit, the chill of the evening enveloped me. Part of me wished I could turn back to the comfort of Ava's presence, where hope had begun to take root despite the shadows of my past suffocating me. Her warmth shone like a lighthouse, guiding me through the storm that was my life. But here I was, drawn back into family chaos by a sibling who had been both a source of pain and longing. The parking lot was eerily quiet, punctuated only by the sound of my shoes crunching over gravel. As I neared the old sedan parked beneath the flickering lamppost, the knot in my stomach tightened. I saw her. Laura sat inside, her dark hair backlit by soft light, her face shadowed yet familiar. When she stepped out, I was struck by the gravity of how much she had changed. Time had added a haunted look to her eyes, a reflection of the struggles we had both endured. "Jim," she started, hesitantly, a shifting weight in her shoulders, "just say what you need to say." I stepped closer, keeping my voice steady, though I felt the eagerness to retreat rise within me. She nodded, exhaling deeply. "I'm sorry for everything, for pushing you away." The vulnerability in her voice stabbed at me where I was most tender. "I've made mistakes, really deep ones. But it's not just about me anymore. We need to talk about Mom." I swallowed hard, her words grounding me in the reality I had been desperate to avoid. "What about her?" My voice wavered, fear clawing at my throat. "She's sick. Really sick, Jim. They found something." As the words fell from her lips, I felt my world tilt, the foundations I'd built on denial and avoidance shaking beneath me. No, I whispered, each syllable weighted down by disbelief. "She's always been fine." My mind flooded with memories of our childhood, days spent under the sun, laughter masking the cracks in our family. "They're saying she might not have much time left. I came back to help, but you need to be there too." Her voice trembled, resonating with the weight of the unfixable distance that had grown between us. The air became oppressive, thick with years of resentment and unresolved pain. The vulnerability in her plea struck a chord of shared loss I couldn't ignore. But fear clinked its chains around my heart, constricting with an iron grip. I had resisted this confrontation for far too long, terrified of what I might feel if confronted with the memory of a family that had once felt whole. A silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken histories, until I finally murmured, "Why now?" "Because I need you to understand. I'm tired of secrets. I want to fix what's broken," Laura admitted, her eyes glossy with unshed tears. A part of me desperately wanted to reach out, to pull her back into my life like a child wanting the comfort of familiarity. Yet another part of me recoiled at the thought of reopening old wounds that could spill over, infecting the fragile progress I had made towards my own healing. "I don't know if I can," I whispered, though inside I grappled with a yearning to reconcile, desperate for resolution. Then, as if the universe had aligned against me, a memory sprang forth, a picture of Mom's laughter and the warmth it held, how it once felt to cherish our bond unconditionally. Part of me still held on to that innocence, while the other recoiled from the endless depths of despair that our family had descended into. "I'll give you time," Laura said softly, stepping back, her vulnerability mirrored in her posture. But she's running out of it. With that, a wall of uncertainty swelled between us once more as she turned to leave. My heart began to race, caught between the world of hope painted by Ava's presence and the bitter reality of family ties that threatened to drag me back under. I wanted to call after her, to ask her to stay, to confront all the things that were never said between us. But as her figure faded into the distance, I realized I was once more standing between two paths, the haunting echoes of my past looming heavy in the night, touching my chest, where my heart beat furiously against the weight of this revelation. I turned back toward the building, feeling the oppressive silence settle around me. Would I find the courage to confront the depths of my past, or would I flee once again, hoping to hold on to a flicker of light I had stumbled upon in Ava? My heart pounded, torn between the call to reclaim family and the fragile hope weaving its way through a different kind of connection. As I stepped back into the darkness of the building, I knew this was not over. My journey was just beginning, filled with choices, challenges, and perhaps the promise of something greater. The fluorescent lights flickered as I walked back inside, the hum echoing my racing thoughts. I scanned the hallway, an unfamiliar heaviness settling over me, like the suffocating weight of a damp blanket. With every step toward the janitor's closet, I felt the fraying ties of the past and the strength of my present stretched dangerously thin. I remembered Ava's laughter, the gentle warmth that had begun to seep into the cracks of my heart. But now everything felt unsettled. In the closet, I busied myself with mops and buckets, forcing my mind to focus on the rhythm of cleaning. It was absurd, this mundane choreography, but there was a solace in the simplicity of routine. I pushed all thoughts of Laura and the cold reality of our mother's health to the recesses of my mind. I filled buckets with water and allowed the repetitive sound of my scrubbing to drown out the chaos swirling in my head. Hours passed. Shifts turned to routines. I lost myself in the task at hand, the world outside fading into the background. Yet, as darkness engulfed the building, my thoughts pried open the festering wounds I tried so hard to ignore. I recalled the last time I truly felt at home. The days when family dinners rang out with laughter, and my mother's gentle guidance soothed the turmoil of adolescent storms. I paused, gripping the mop handle until my knuckles blanched. I felt the raw edges of my fractured family tugging at me, their desires mingling as shadows in my mind. I had been shutting everything out while pretending that Ava was my escape, a surface upon which to float free of the turbulent waters below. The truth was, Laura's call had dredged up more than the fear of confronting my mother's mortality. It had revealed the frailty of every connection I held dear. Just as I started to clean the last corridor, I noticed a small flicker of movement by the entrance. My heart quickened when I saw Ava. She stood by the door, her dark curls illuminated by the muted light, eyes scanning the hallway with a kindness that felt like a balm on my exposed heart. "Hey," I called out, trying to mask the weight still lingering within me. "Hey," she replied, a soft smile breaking through the worry etched on her face. "I was just checking in. How was your day?" It felt so normal, her presence so refreshing amidst the turmoil. The stress of my earlier sentiments rushed to the surface as I saw her, and for a split second, I contemplated sharing everything that had surfaced after Laura's call. But part of me resisted, unwilling to taint the lightness that Ava brought. "It's been long," I finally replied, trying to weave my feelings into something palatable. "You, busy," she said, her brows furrowing as she leaned against the doorframe. "But good. I found this little coffee shop a few blocks away, made me think of you. It has your favorite blend." Her excitement was infectious, a small sliver of connection that anchored me back to life. The laughter bubbling between us, however temporary, offered a momentary escape from the pressing shadows that loomed over my consciousness. "Let's go sometime," I suggested, more enthusiastically than I intended, and the truth of the moment filled my chest with warmth. Without realizing, I was stepping back into the light, a flicker of hope igniting amidst the darkness. As we conversed easily, sharing stories that felt otherworldly against the backdrop of the weight on my heart, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that all was not as it seemed. The shadows of Lucy hovered at the fringes of my mind, a reminder of unfinished business and lurking pain. Ava's laughter was like cotton candy, sweet and bright, but the edges of reality crept ever closer. Suddenly, I found myself glancing down the corridor again, anxiety gnawing away at the momentary reprieve she brought. "Can I ask you something?" I hesitated, considering how much of my burden I could share without dimming the joy between us. "Of course," she replied, concern flickering in her eyes as she moved closer. "It's about family," I began, wrestling with the words, the tension spilling from my heart. "My sister called, she says Mom is sick." Ava's expression shifted, a mixture of empathy and surprise washing over her features. "I'm so sorry, Jim." "That sounds incredibly difficult." That I nodded, the vulnerability tightened my throat. "I don't know how to handle it. I've been distancing myself from all of this for so long, and now," I faltered, the truth clawing its way out. "Now I'm torn between confronting the past or continuing forward with what feels safer." Ava reached out, squeezing my hand compassionately. "It sounds like you want to protect yourself. But sometimes confronting those emotions can lead to healing, even when it feels impossible." Her words resonated in a way that stirred something deep within me, a warmth that offered a sliver of bravery. "Yeah, but what if I make everything worse?" "Sometimes, worse is just another chance to find what we need," Ava replied softly. "I can't pretend to understand your journey, but I'm here, no matter what you decide." My heart swelled at her kindness, an unexpected comfort in sharing my turmoil. I had both the danger of a past I was unwilling to revisit and the light of a present that was beginning to hold meaning again. But just as I started to feel a flicker of hope, my phone buzzed again in my pocket. A text from Laura, the spark that could ignite my urge to escape. I glanced down, dread pooling in my stomach when I read her message. "Jim, we really need to talk. Please come home." A chill crept over me, interrupting the warmth Ava had ignited within me. The ground felt unsteady as reality circled back, pulling me away from her embrace and toward the very heart of my fear. "To think I need to go," I stammered, the fight in me suddenly feeling frail. Ava's grip tightened for just a moment longer, concern flickering across her features. "Are you okay?" I nodded, though inside, I felt anything but certain. As I turned to leave, my heart felt heavy with what lay ahead, a brutal tug-of-war between the lingering shadows of family and the flickering light of newfound hope. I knew the messages were clear. Closure and confrontation awaited me, but so did an uncertain future that could shatter everything I had hoped might heal. As I stepped back out into the night, the world around me blurred. The weight of old wounds and new beginnings turned into a dilemma that I was not prepared to face alone. As I walked away from the warmth of Ava's light, the night air felt colder than before, and each step toward my car was a reminder of the emotional battlefield I was about to return to. The streetlights buzzed above me, casting long shadows that slithered across the pavement, paralleling the turmoil within me. I fumbled with my keys, fingers trembling as uncertainty bubbled up inside, intensifying with every passing moment. The drive back home became a blur, road signs and familiar streets merging into an abstract painting of anxiety. I wrestled with the thought of Laura, an anchor of resentment and disappointment that had marked my life since childhood. I had been so busy getting lost in the bliss of the present that the specter of my past gnawed hungrily at my insides. As I pulled into the driveway, the house loomed ahead, its facade mired in a darkness that mirrored my internal chaos. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the air in my lungs, and stepped out of the car, a miasma of fear settling into my chest. I could hear my own heartbeat echoing in the quietness, each thud reverberating with the memories I had buried, disagreements, slammed doors, and a mother's tear-stained face. Inside, the dim lights flickered shyly, revealing hints of clutter, the wear and tear of neglect. My family's indifference to one another loomed larger than the walls around me. My footsteps felt heavy as I approached the living room, where Laura sat hunched over on the couch, an open laptop resting against her knees, the glow illuminating her tired eyes. She looked up as I stepped inside, the familiar frown etched upon her face. "Finally," she said, her voice laced with a mix of frustration and concern. "You took long enough. We really need to talk about Mom." With her words, the floodgates opened, and emotions surged forth: anger, guilt, despair. "You think I wanted to be here? To deal with this?" I shot back, fighting to find my footing amidst the growing tide of our family's issues. "I'm just trying to keep it together." her brow furrowed as she held my gaze. "I'm trying to do the same, Jim. Can't you see that? It's not just about you anymore. Mom needs us." That I squeezed my eyes shut, the image of our mother's frail form materializing in my consciousness, the reality of her illness crashing into the safe walls I had built around myself. "What do you want me to say, Laura? I don't have the words, I don't know how to do this." Laura's voice softened, breaking a little at the edges. "I need you to be part of this, Jim. We can't keep avoiding it. Mom can't fight alone." The crack in her armor tugged at my heart, a sobering reminder of the ties that bound us as siblings. I stood there, caught in the turbulent space between wanting to run from our shared pain and the stark reality of our conversation. "I don't know if I can," I admitted, every ounce of relinquishing power scraping through my chest like gravel. Laura exhaled slowly, her shoulders relaxing just a fraction as if recognizing the battle I had been waging within. "It's okay to not be okay. Just please, talk to her. I can't do this alone either." As my sister's words hung between us, the vulnerability in her eyes was a mirror reflecting my own fears. I forced myself to exhale, releasing my pent-up sorrow into the air around us. What are we supposed to say? What if she suddenly, the chaotic ring of my phone cut through the suffocating tension, an unwelcome intruder shattering the fragile moment? I glanced at it, the screen lighting up with Ava's name, and for a heartbeat, I was torn between voicing my heartache to Laura and holding on to the sliver of hope that Ava represented. "Just answer it," Laura urged, sensing my hesitation. As I swiped to accept the call, I was unprepared for the world cascading into fragments. "Jim?" Ava's voice trembled on the other end, urgency seeping through each syllable. I think you should know. I ran into someone who asked about you, and they said something about your mom." A chill cascaded down my spine, dread pooling in the pit of my stomach. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice hoarse as the realization settled like it was someone from your past. "They mentioned her condition, Jim. Something about a hospital?" The world tilted beneath me. "A hospital?" My voice barely escaped as I felt the walls begin to close in. "Which one, Ava, please, what are you saying?" Laura's worry surfaced, worry cutting across the thin filament of my resolve. "Lakeside," Ava replied, her voice steady and laced with concern. "I think it's serious. You should come here, we can face this together." The weight of reality crashed over me like a tidal wave, the strands of my relationship with Laura, my mother, and the ghosts of my past unraveling into chaos. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words formed as the suffocation of fear snaked tighter around my chest. "Jim?" Ava's voice pulled me back, tinged with an urgency that struck through the numbness. "I'll be there," I managed, the decision marking the crossroad of my journey ahead, my expression mirroring the concern reflected in Laura's eyes, both of us unprepared for the truth we were about to confront. As I hung up, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet, the connection to Ava, the flicker of love I had begun to nurture amidst the darkness, now entangled in the chaos of my family. For every revelation offered a glimmer of hope, but it also brought with it the weight of everything I had been desperately avoiding. I looked at Laura, and she met my gaze, apprehension weaving through the fibers of our frayed bond. "Let's go," I said, voice steadied by the looming uncertainty. To face the shadows of my past, I would finally step into the light. But as we moved toward our inevitable confrontation, a whisper of fear echoed, resonating with the question, would the truth we were about to embrace be what ultimately tore us apart or brought us back together? The journey to Lakeside Hospital felt like stepping into another world, a realm where time slowed and the weight of reality pressed down harder with every mile. The car ride was shrouded in silence, a hesitant truce between Laura and me as we shared the unspoken fears lurking in the dim light of the evening sky. Arriving at the hospital felt surreal. The sterile scent of antiseptic and the muffled sounds of distant commotion wrapped around me like a shroud. The facade, bright and clinical, stood in stark contrast to the chaos inside me, where memories of family dinners and laughter clashed with anxiety and dread. As I pushed through the sliding glass doors, I instinctively reached out for Laura's hand. Her skin was warm against mine, a tether in a place that felt strange and unfamiliar. "We can do this," she whispered, though her voice trembled slightly, betraying the confidence she tried to project. Before us, a reception desk hovered with the weight of bureaucracy, an island in a sea of uncertainty. I approached, nerves twisting my insides, and cleared my throat. "I'm looking for my mother, Elizabeth Foster." She was admitted here. My voice faltered as the receptionist's gaze shifted to her computer screen, processing my words with a mechanical efficiency that felt utterly devoid of empathy. "Please wait a moment," she said, her eyes darting as she clicked away at the keys. I glanced at Laura, swallowing hard. What if she doesn't even recognize us? The thought landed like a stone in my chest, heavy and cold. Laura squeezed my hand tighter. "We have to try, Jim. No matter what happens." The receptionist finally looked back up, her expression flat as she relayed the information. "Room 203, down the hall to your right. Family visiting hours are limited, so try to keep it brief." The words felt like an incantation that propelled us forward, and we trudged toward that room, the linoleum floor cold beneath my feet. Each door we passed bore witness to stories of pain and healing, victories and a reminder that we weren't alone in this struggle, though it felt painfully isolating at that moment. Finally, we reached room 203. The sight of the door sent a shiver through me, my breath caught in my throat. I hesitated, my hand hovering above the doorknob as self-doubt mingled with the fear of disappointment. The thought of her as I had last seen her, a vibrant woman filled with laughter compared to the reality we faced now, brought hot tears to my eyes. I pushed open the door, and as the hinges groaned in protest, the room unfolded before us. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead, illuminating the small space where my mother lay. Fragile, almost ethereal, her once vibrant presence barely flickered against the sterile white sheets. "Mom?" I croaked, the word barely escaping my lips as I crossed the threshold. "Jim?" Her voice was a thin whisper, like the sound of dried leaves crumbling underfoot. The pain in her eyes paired with the faint spark of recognition twisted my heart into knots. "I'm here," I managed to reply, moving closer, drawn by emotions I struggled to label: fear, sorrow, but somewhere beneath it all, a deep-rooted love. "Laura," she croaked, and my sister stepped forward, tears glistening in her wide eyes as she caught our mother's gaze. The sound of a reunion, a fragile bridge across an ocean of unspoken regrets. "That I am right here, Mom," Laura said, her voice imbued with a steadiness I wished I could muster. The room felt smaller, the air thickening as silence enveloped us. My mother's breathing was shallow, the rhythmic sound a haunting backdrop to the poignant moment. Fear mingled with hope, each passing second stretching endlessly as we hovered at the edge of something unknown. "That I thought," my mom began, her voice catching, "I thought I wouldn't see you two again." "We're here, Mom." "We wanted to be here," I interjected, feeling the floodgates threatening to burst open again. "Please, let us help." Tears pooled in her eyes, reflecting the helplessness etched deep into her features. I don't want to be a burden." "I never wanted to," Laura interjected, her voice steady with conviction. "You're not a burden. We love you. We want to be by your side." Just then, the door creaked open, and a nurse entered with quick, purposeful strides, disrupting the fragile moment. "Sorry to interrupt. You can only stay for a few more minutes. We have to check her vitals." As she moved about the room, adjusting IVs and taking notes, the heaviness of our conversation settled around us like a thick fog, obscuring our path forward. I could feel the slip of time racing away from us, urgency mixing with our fears like a cacophony. The nurse's movements were efficient, but an unexpected warmth emanated from her as she offered us a gentle smile. "She's stable, but we'd recommend bringing in her favorite things to help her feel more at home." I felt a flicker of hope igniting within me, pushing through the darkness. Is there a way we can bring in her favorite music?" The nurse nodded, her smile brightening. "Absolutely. Music can be incredibly healing. Would you like me to help set it up?" "Yes, please," Laura said, her voice bursting with enthusiasm, the flicker of hope we desperately needed igniting in her expression. As the nurse began to speak with us about setting up her favorite songs, I felt a deep gratitude for this momentous reminder that even amid chaos, kindness could seep in unexpectedly. I looked at Laura, a shared understanding passing between us. Perhaps we could navigate this together. But just as I began to breathe easier, a sudden commotion broke out in the hallway. Shouts reverberated through the walls, an unsettling buzz thrumming beneath my skin. "What's happening?" I whispered, dread filling the space around us. The nurse's expression soured as she rushed to the door, peering out. Slowly she turned back to us, eyes wide. "I think there's been an incident on this floor." My heart dropped, apprehension spiraling as the shouts grew louder, tinged with urgency. "What kind of incident?" Before the nurse could respond, a medic rushed in, eyes frantic, scanning our faces and settling on my mother. "We need to move her now." The command struck like lightning, tearing apart the fragile moment we had built. "What? Move her where?" I stammered, confusion and panic swirling together. The medic offered no further explanation, only gestured toward the bed, urgency painting his face. Laura stepped closer to our mother, her hand shaking on the rail. "Mom, we're right here." "Well, be here." As they wheeled my mother away, I felt the ground underneath me shift once again, unease suffocating the hope we had clung to just moments before. The scene descended into a whirlwind, nurses running past us, cords clanging, lights flickering. "What's happening?" I pleaded, fear coiling tighter in my belly. But as I turned to find the medic for answers, all I could think was that I had promised to confront the shadows of my past, and now they threatened to swallow us whole instead. Then, amid the chaos, something caught my eye. A man stood at the far end of the hallway, his face concealed beneath a cap, but there was something familiar about him, something that sent chills racing up my spine. He met my gaze, and for a brief moment, time hung suspended, the weight of unspoken history crackling in the air between us. Who was he? Why was he here? And with everything spiraling out of control, I couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter would change everything. The commotion in the hallway swallowed the dim light of hope we had carefully nurtured. Nurses dashed past, their faces painted with urgency, leaving a whirlwind behind them. My heart raced as I stared at the medic pushing my mother's bed away, the echo of Laura's voice fading into the din. I felt an invisible thread snap, the bond we'd only just begun to rebuild fraying in a heartbeat. "Wait. Where are you taking her?" I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. The medic didn't turn back, his focus fixed ahead, and with each second that passed, the distance between us seemed to stretch into an unbridgeable chasm. Laura was beside me, tears streaming down her cheeks, her hands clenched tightly in a futile attempt to regain control. "Jim, we need to follow them," she urged, urgency sharpening her voice. With no time to waste, we set off in a hurried pursuit down the long, sterile corridor, our senses ablaze with confusion. We turned corners, our footsteps echoing against the sterile tiles, chasing the shadows of our dreams, now spinning out of control. The overhead lights flickered sporadically, adding to the disarray. As we rounded yet another bend, the noise intensified, a wall of sound crashing around us, full of equipment beeping, orders being barked, and muffled voices punctuated by the rising tide of fear. My mind raced, painting pictures of the worst-case scenarios. "Jim, look!" Laura's voice sliced through the chaos, and I followed her gaze to the far end of the hall where the man in the cap stood, leaning against the wall with an unnaturally calm demeanor amidst the storm. My pulse quickened as I recognized him. Ethan, my childhood friend turned adversary, the shadow of my past I had thought long buried. "What is he doing here?" I whispered, my eyes narrowing. Memories washed over my ears spent arguing over petty disagreements, the unspoken estrangement stirred by the ashes of lost friendship. Before I could voice my thoughts, the cacophony around us shifted as a gurney zipped past, medics encircling it. I caught a glimpse of my mother, eyes wide and searching, but the moment evaporated as the doors to the operating room swung shut, sealing her behind a barrier of uncertainty. Every instinct screamed at me to run to her, but I felt frozen, pulled back toward Ethan like a moth to flame. He pushed off the wall, his expression unreadable, eyes piercing as they locked onto mine. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, a mix of anger and confusion bubbling within me. "This isn't the time for I'm here for her," he interrupted, lowering his voice, glancing around as if to ensure no one else could hear. "Elizabeth, she's important to me. I need to know she's all right." The revelation hit me like a punch, and for a split second, everything else melted away. My mother had known Ethan in ways I hadn't realized, ways that resurfaced old wounds and insecurities. "What do you mean important to you?" I hissed, the intensity of my emotions spilling forth unfiltered. He took a step forward, lowering his cap slightly, revealing the lines of worry etched into his brow. "I visited her when she first came here. She was always like a second mother to me, Jim. I am sorry for how things ended between us." The tumult of feelings spiraled within me: betrayal, anger, and something else, darker and more confusing. Felt as though the ground was shifting beneath me as I tried to make sense of this new reality. "You think you can just show up now, after all these years? What right do you have to write?" He cut me off, voice edged with frustration. "Do you think I wanted to come back into your life this way? I would have never come if it weren't for her. I came because I care." Before I could respond, an alarm blared, shaking through the halls like a thunderstorm signaling a change. Nurses and doctors scrambled, urgency flooding the atmosphere as another gurney raced past, this one with a sheet covering it. "Stay here," Laura said, her grip tightening on my arm. "I'll find out what's happening." She darted after the group, and I was left standing in between Ethan's intense gaze and the chaos unfolding before us. Conflicting emotions churned within me like a violent storm. "Jim," Ethan urged softly, breaking the haze. "I don't know what's going to happen with your mother, but she means the world to me. Please, let's work together for her sake." I opened my mouth to refuse him, the instinct to push him away almost overpowering, but the earnestness in his eyes made me hesitate. There was history between us, bitter and sweet, a tapestry woven with shared moments that couldn't just be unraveled. Just then, a voice came over the hospital intercom, loud and urgent. "Code Blue on floor 2, room 205. All available staff respond immediately." Time froze as dread washed over me, ice cold and paralyzing. Room 205, was that my mother's room? As realization struck, I turned back to Ethan, our unspoken bond fused with mutual desperation. "We need to find her." Now that he nodded solemnly, determination flaring in his expression. Together, we raced down the corridor, two figures against the tide of uncertainty, moving toward the storm that awaited us, the very storm that threatened to tear our family apart, bringing with it the lingering question: could reconciliation even begin among the ruins? Each step pulsed with urgency, but beneath the surface, a more profound truth was surfacing, one I couldn't yet comprehend. The shapes of our lives were shifting in ways I hadn't imagined, and the past was never truly behind us. As we approached room 205, I felt that the answers, however painful, were lurking just beyond the door, ready to crash into our lives with the force of a tidal wave. The fluorescent lights flickered violently overhead as ominous echoes of the intercom resonated down the stark hallway. The air felt heavier, suffused with tension and shared anxiety. Footsteps hastened and breaths quickened. Ethan and I exchanged a glance, a silent agreement hanging between us as we pushed forward, hearts pounding like war drums. We skidded to a halt outside room 205, the door ominously closed. The sound of hushed voices within pierced through the thin barrier and arched my back with unease. "What if I began," the words catching in my throat. I took a breath that felt too heavy with the weight of possibility. "What if it's too late? We can't think like that," Ethan replied, eyes steely yet trembling with a vulnerability that made my chest tighten. "We need to stay strong for her." Before I could respond, the door swung open and a nurse stepped out, her face pale, eyes heavy with unshed tears. A knife of apprehension sliced through me as I caught the nameplate on the door, our world reduced to this single room, where life and death danced like shadows. "Mrs. Thompson's family?" The nurse called, her voice wavering as she met my gaze. It was a flickering candle in a dark room, fragile yet illuminating. I felt something deep within me snap as I stepped forward, my voice hoarse. "Yes," I managed to whisper, my heart hammering against my ribs. "I'm afraid she's not stable. The doctors are doing everything they can," but the words hung unspoken, loud in their silence. Laura had appeared behind me, breathless and wide-eyed, and I could see the realization wash over her face like a tidal wave. My heart ached at the sight of her hurt. "Can we see her?" Laura asked, her spirit unyielding even in despair. "I'm so sorry, but only for a moment. I can't guarantee she'll hold on." The nurse's voice drifted off as she gestured for us to enter. The revelation that we might soon be saying goodbye pierced through my insides like glass. I stepped inside, the sterile scent of disinfectant sharp in the air. The sight before me shattered my resolve. My mother lay unconscious, wires coiled around her like snakes, beeping machines emitting rhythmic cries that matched my heartache. Vaguely, I registered the steady sound, the hum of life intertwined with grief. A familiar melody turned melancholic. The small room felt even smaller now, suffocating in its stark reality. I didn't know whether to scream, cry, or simply collapse. The familiar landscape of my childhood blinked at me from her frail form. The woman who had warned me about pitfalls, lifted me from despair, filled my days with laughter, all of it condensed into this fragile being. Tears cascaded down my cheeks as I stepped closer, grasping her hand. "Mom, please," I whispered, not knowing if she could hear me. "Just hold on. We're here." The tremble in my voice betrayed the steely composure I tried to maintain. I could almost see the tapestry of our shared moments unfurling behind my eyes, her laughter at my clumsy attempts at cooking, the bedtime stories that turned into long discussions, years spanning between us like the fragile strands of a spider's web. Laura stood at the edge of the bed, wringing her hands, unable to contain the ache that mirrored my own. "This isn't fair," she breathed, the weight of our shared despair drawing us into closer proximity. Ethan stood behind us, distant yet ever watchful, a layer of unspoken regret lingering in the air. In that moment of agony, solace found me as I felt Laura's hand entwine with mine, grounding us amidst the uncertainty. We were bound not only by fear but by a fragile thread of hope, a flicker that maybe, just maybe, we could fight this together. And yet, even that comfort began to fray, for I sensed Ethan's eyes on me, his presence stirring the embers of old grievances, reminding me of the storm clouds that had cast shadows across our lives. I fought against that conflict as I thought of the forgiveness we needed to forge, of the reconciliation that, while seeming light years away, felt like it was in the air. Just then, a doctor stormed in, adrenaline coursing through him. "Family?" he asked, urgency textured into every syllable. I nodded mutely, caught in a downward spiral of uncertainty. "We need to take her into surgery immediately. We've lost her vital signs, and we have to try to stabilize her, otherwise is there a chance?" I pushed, desperation pressing against the edges of my thoughts. The doctor met my gaze, sympathy mingling with resolution. "We'll do our best, but I won't sugarcoat it. The next few hours are critical." Time warped as he explained what would happen next, but all I could register were the flickering shadows of my mother's life slipping through our hands. I nodded along, my heart a cacophony of fear, anger, and sorrow, yet there was something Maureen unsettling undercurrent of unfinished stories and unresolved conflicts swirling within me. As they wheeled her away, a crushing silence wrapped around us tighter than the cords tethering her fragile existence. I stood frozen, watching the door swing shut, a physical barrier placed between us and the hope of her return. Suddenly, I felt a tug at my arm and turned to see Laura, her eyes dark yet luminous, the spark of determination igniting between us. "Jim, I know this is hard, but we can't lose ourselves in despair. We have to find a way to pull through together." Her resolve washed over me in a wave, but as I opened my mouth to respond, Ethan stepped closer. His voice was low yet unwavering, a remnants of our past igniting within the turmoil. "For her sake, I will do whatever it takes, Jim. We can't let this destroy what little we have left." As I looked between them, the gravity of what lay ahead toppled my thoughts into chaos. the flickering thread of hope intertwined with the shadows of our past. Could I truly work with him? Could I trust the very source of my heartache with the heart of my mother? And then, unexpectedly, I was gripped by a revelation, a fleeting glimpse of a path marked with uncertainty but illuminated by small flickers of kindness. Hope may not be an end game but rather an unending journey, but that comet of hope was soon eclipsed when the sound of a high-pitched alarm echoed down the corridor, vibrating through the walls, freezing me in place. I caught a glimpse of movement just beyond the door where my mother had been taken. Shadows twisted with urgency, the cacophony growing louder. "Something's happening," Laura said, staring wide-eyed. Fear was the currency of our despair, and comfort could only take us so far. Ethan's hand clasped my shoulder, a bridge across the chasm of uncertainty. "Jim, we need to go find out what's going on." As my heart raced, the world around us felt as though it were slipping through our fingers like sand, time collapsing in on itself as the reality of our situation crashed down like a wave. I barely took a step toward the sound before something shifted in the room, an unseen force pulling the edges of my world into focus, and I sensed the weight of secrets untold looming just beyond the door. What awaited us might tear us apart even further, or perhaps, in the face of this storm, we could finally stitch together the pieces of our lives, binding the threads of our shared tragedy and hope into something new, even as the shadows grew darker. The beeping machines crescendoed, a symphony of urgency thrumming around us. The hallway echoed with the hurried footsteps of nurses and the distant sound of intercoms, blending into a chaotic melody that knotted my stomach with dread. "Stay close." Laura's voice was thin but firm, her hand reaching for mine as we stepped into that churning sea of fear together. We approached the nurses' station, where a doctor tall, with dark hair slightly tousled, was deep in conversation with a nurse, their brows furrowed in concern, voices hushed but urgent. "Please, what's happening?" I reached forward, the impulse pushing a mixture of fear and anger boiling up within me. "Is it my mother?" The question escaped my lips before I could contain it. Raw and desperate, the doctor looked up, surprise evident in his eyes before melting into concern. "We're doing everything we can," he assured us, his voice steady yet calming. "Your mother is in critical condition. We've had to call in specialists. Her heart is failing, and we need to take further measures to stabilize her." My heart dropped, an icy fist closing around my throat. Stabilize? What does that even mean? I barely managed, overwhelmed by the flood of emotion swarming me like a tempest, threatening to drown me whole. "Essentially, we need to prepare her for surgery." "It's her only chance," he said, taking a step closer but not closer to comfort. There was a fracture in the atmosphere between us, one filled with trembling fear and uncertainty stark enough to break me. Ethan nodded slightly from behind me, his presence as comforting as it was unsettling, tension threading through the air. "What are the odds?" he asked cautiously, glancing over at me, an attempt to press in through the blurred lines between us. The doctor glanced between us, his expression turning somber. "I won't lie, it's not great. But we must act now. You need to decide quickly. Do you want to see her before we proceed?" Laura and I exchanged a quick glance, her eyes wide with fear and sorrow, an unspoken pact rising between us. This was our moment, our chance to share every last thing we hadn't said, in case it was the final chance we had. "Yes," we both said in unison, the word hanging in the air with a weight that pressed down on my heart. The doctor led us further down the hallway until we reached a pair of double doors. "You have 5 minutes. I suggest you each say what's in your hearts." It could be the last opportunity. The walls felt constricting as the door swung open, revealing a small room bathed in a stark white light that glared down at us, bright yet cold, entirely too clinical. My mother lay there, frail and pale, a mere shadow of the vibrant woman I had known. Tubes snaked around her arms, and the rhythm of the machines filled the void between us, a haunting reminder of how perilously close we danced between life and death. "Mom," I managed, my voice breaking as I stepped forward, a raw wound in my throat straining against the overwhelming emotion threatening to explode. Laura followed closely behind me, gripping my arm like a lifeline. "We're here. Please fight." Slowly, her eyelids fluttered, struggling against the pulling weight of exhaustion. "Jim?" Laura?" She croaked, a soft whisper fighting through the haze. Seeing recognition flash in her dull eyes ignited a small flicker of hope within me. I thought she paused, shadows of fear rippling across her features. "I thought I wouldn't see you two again. No, Mom, don't think that," Laura urged, stepping closer. "We're going to get through this." Tears streamed down her face as she reached out to grasp our mother's trembling hand. "This isn't goodbye," I added, my voice strong despite the terror coursing through me. "You're going to get better. We need you to love you, Mom." Her gaze softened, and for a brief moment, there was clarity. "Oh, my sweet children." The words hung in the air, heavy and saturated with yearning. We needed so much more than what we could say in those fleeting moments. "I'm so sorry for everything," I murmured, my heart pouring out the regrets of missed calls, lost time, and the guilt of years spent apart. "For not being there when you needed me." She squeezed Laura's hand tightly as tears pooled in her eyes. "I love you both. Remember, you're stronger together." "Always," Laura whispered, fighting back her tears. Ethan stepped forward, his presence heavy with an unspoken apology as he softly cleared his throat. "Ms. Foster," he said gently, Ethan. "I'm sorry for everything that happened. I want you to know I care about you and Jim, and what happens here matters. We're all rooting for you." My mother turned her head, the corners of her lips lifting slightly. Thank you for being there for my boy." It felt like shared forgiveness, a binding moment that draped over the fractured history that had clouded our connection. As the seconds ticked away, I felt the earth itself shift beneath us, marking each crucial heartbeat. Our time slipped through the fingers of uncertainty, yet for the first time, I felt a profound understanding that perhaps reconciliation wasn't meant to erase the pain of our history but to breathe new life into it. Suddenly, a voice from the intercom blared, slicing straight through our hopeful moment. "All available staff to surgery prep, stat." I felt my heart seize, and with it, the conscious realization of how rapidly this might turn. "Jim?" Laura's whispered voice broke through. "We have to let her go, don't we?" The weight of separation pulled us taut as I nodded slowly, tears prickling at the corners of my eyes. "How can we?" I gasped, desperate to hang on, dreading the thought of losing her again, but then she whispered back, the light in her eyes darkening as she turned her gaze toward us, "It's okay. You both have to live. Promise me you'll stay strong for each other." "Mom, no!" I exclaimed, my heart racing. "We can't promise me," she repeated, her voice gaining strength, fueling a flicker of power within me, deeper than the pain swirling above. "You're bound by love. Hold on to it through everything." "Okay," Laura's voice cracked, swallowing the excess of emotions threatening to burst forth as she clasped our mother's hand. "We promise, Mom. We always will." Heavy footsteps echoed from the corridor soon. The room would fill with doctors and nurses, taking her from us. As they moved to wheel her away, I stepped forward, my heart pounding. "I'll come back. I promise I'll be right here," I urged, clutching her hand tightly. Through glazed eyes, she positioned her lips to form words, but nothing would come, yet the certainty in her gaze said everything. It was an understanding beyond words between all of us, carrying the weight of memories, the laughter shared, the tears fought through, and the shadows embraced. The nurses moved swiftly into the room, breaking the sacred moment. "We have to go, now," a nurse said, her tone gentle yet urgent. I tightened my grip on her hand, letting my tears drip down, yet forging my resolve into something unbreakable. As they wheeled her away, I felt a part of me tighten with every inch. But there, between the fading echoes of our breaths, the memory of her voice rang like a bell, a promise of healing, forgiveness, and love brandished against a tumultuous past. "Stay strong for each other." The phrase reverberated in my heart like a tattoo, etching clarity against the chaos surrounding us. And even as Laura leaned against me, both of us trembling with fear and sorrow, I felt my lungs clear for the first time, heart droplets of hope seeping in. "Together. We'll weather this storm together," I whispered. As we turned to face the waves crashing against us, I caught a glimpse of Ethan standing resolute beside us, uncertainty flickering in his eyes but determination burning brightly. Together, in the face of the unknown, a fragile alliance was born, yet it held power. A confidence stirred up and brewing like a tempest against the backdrop of fear. In that moment, I realized, family is not always determined by blood but by the bonds forged in the fires of love. Even in the darkest of nights, hope can emerge from the ruins, and forgiveness can breathe anew. As we faced the chaos, I understood that incomplete journeys often lead us home, and though the path was fraught with heartache, it was also sprinkled with moments of Clarissa, testament to what was, and most importantly, what could still be, and each breath in that sterile hallway resonated with the promise of brighter tomorrows. We would hold on. Together. The flicker of resilience ignited within me gave way to profound maybes and bright possibilities, the ever-unfolding tapestry that would connect us all, no matter how heavy the shadows fell. In that hospital hallway, the final thread in our story woven tighter, it became strikingly clear, a journey of healing couldn't be walked alone. And in relinquishing the past to grasp onto the present, perhaps the greatest healing of all would come through the very act of embracing love once more and always. It was then I felt the story I had lost begin to take shape again, surrounded by my mother's whispers and the glow of hope that dared to shine anew. Together, we would find our way back into the light.